Round 16 gave us a clearer picture of who's coming into form at the right part of the season. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Round 16 saw some teams really pushing their claim for a place in the knockout stages, others losing a little bit of ground, and also that race to the top is as tight as ever. We're going to go down through each of the games, not spend, we spend a few minutes in each one. It's probably going to be 30-40 minute video as usual, but we'll see where we get to at the end, and then we'll have a look at the table after we've gone through each of the games. So first of all, we start with the Friday night games. It was Dragons 21, Stormers 44. So we got a nicely worked move from a 5-metre line out, and Keddy picks and goes over to open the scoring for the Dragons. The Dragons had a really bright start to this game. Hallant then drifts through a gap and puts a lovely crossfield grubber kick to Davids. He goes over to score. Davids then goes over again shortly after, but he's knocked on at the build-up, so it's no try. Wainwright forces a way over from close range, and Dragons leading with 20 minutes left in the game. And it's a much better performance than we've seen for the Dragons in a while. They've had that middle period, as I talked about previously, where they've kind of fallen off a little bit, but we are seeing that little bit of a bounce from them now as we come to the end of the season, and maybe thoughts go to building for next season. We have a great carry from Daimani, excellent player, really like that guy, gets it out to Hallant, and then Davids is over in the corner. Stormers then drive over from a 5-metre line out maul for the bonus point try. Dragons with a man at the bin at that stage. Evan Roos is the score. Fernberg and Gamazuli then adds a late double. For the first one, Stormers keep the ball alive in broken play. Some really great skills to getting him over. Second one, then he finishes off a nice move from a dominant scrum. Final score, Dragons 21, Stormers 44. So, as I said, Dragons, a little bit of a bounce in terms of performance. Not getting the result, which, for next year, that bounce will be a positive thing for them, but still, not expecting to get a result against the Stormers, but next year they will have to be looking to getting some more results at home if they do want to improve their finishing position. Stormers, decent win from them. It's they delivered the bonus point win, and they knew this could be a little bit of a banana skin from them, and maybe when Dragons got that decent start there, 20 minutes to go and they're behind, that's when they had to come and they had to deliver, and they did it really well, I felt, in that final quarter of the game. Next one then is Edinburgh 40, Zebre 14. So Ashman, first of all, breaks off a 5-metre driving maul. He gets over to score. Then Priscantelli collects a kick, goes through a massive gap in the Edinburgh line, and then over to score. He ran it basically from his own 22. And I don't know why there was such a disconnect in the Edinburgh line, but he saw where it was. And there was obviously a few of his own players saw that as well, because they were basically, acting as legal, blockers in the middle there as well. But nice spot from him and good pace to finish. Ashman then gets a second try, and this one comes through the maul as well. Nell goes over from close range to stretch that lead just before the break. Zebre's forwards then stuck in the defence. They're on that Edinburgh line. They go out to the backs, and Trulla scores out wide. Dean again goes over for the bonus point try off the back of another strong Edinburgh maul. Velicott snipes after, it was one of these ones where I think they were tacking off a line out. He gets tackled, but quickly gets back to his feet. I think he tapped it, and then he picks it up, and goes again, and just catches Edinburgh on the hop there to go over and score. Sebastian then profits from another great maul to get the final try of the game. So Edinburgh's maul really to the fore there, and it's a weapon that if they can make the playoffs, could be something that they can use to potentially progress a little bit further. But they're still one of those teams on the edge in terms of whether they're going to make it or not. But you could include almost all of the teams in the play, like in those playoff positions at the minute. Next, then we have the Bulls 40, Glasgow 34. This was a great game. Kind of, like looking at the score, you think it was nip and tuck, but it was more like we'll see Bulls surging ahead and Glasgow coming back. But it's the Glasgow who open the scoring. Clever ball to the front of the line-out, catches the Bulls napping, and Matt Ferguson barges through a tackle to score. Then with Kyle Steyn in the bin, the Bulls hit back. Vermaak around the corner from a 5-meter line-out. He offloads for Van der Merwe to score in the corner. Really well worked from them. I think it was Norgia maybe who claimed the line-out initially, I think. Hanekom's try then puts the Bulls in front just before the end of that yellow card period. Aronson then slices through the middle of the Glasgow defence before an offload to Lowe to score under the posts. Nice hands across the line, then puts Canan Moody over to score the bonus point try. And yeah, it looks like the Bulls are maybe running away with this one. A couple of penalties from Smith and the Bulls are leading 37 points to 10. But then the Glasgow fight back begins. Nice skip pass, finds Steyn in acres of space and he jogs over to score. Cancellieri then intercepts for their third try, and that was kind of, a little bit of like a turning point in terms of how the game finished, because, if he didn't intercept, Bulls maybe going to break and get an extra score, and maybe it's going to be a bit of a blowout, but he's done that. He's read it really well, and he had the pace to finish. Great offloading then sees Glasgow just steaming up the middle of the field. Bulls really struggling to reset their defence because of the pace that Glasgow are playing at. It's just offload after offload. Weir then darts over to finish off that move and get the bonus point try for Glasgow. Smith nails a penalty from halfway to seemingly deny Glasgow at least a losing bonus point out of the game, but then Weir lands a kick with a clock in the red, and it is two bonus points for Glasgow, try bonus point and that losing bonus point as well. Full time 40 points to 34. Next one then is Scarlets, or actually let's come back to this one for a second because I didn't talk too much about the teams. So both these teams in contention at the top of the table. The Bulls certainly will be happy with a bonus point win. They will not be happy with the fact that they allowed Glasgow to come back and claim 2 bonus points out of this as well. One of their rivals, they were in a position there to, potentially win the game 5 match points to 0. And they didn't do that, so they're not going to be happy with how they finished the game. They're certainly going to be happy with the win. Glasgow, going down to South Africa on the tour, they probably felt like they've got to get something out of both of their games in order to put the pressure, keep that pressure on Leinster. In terms of, even though Glasgow are top of the table, they know they've got to keep winning to stay there. And although they didn't win this one, they got the maximum points that they could have in a loss out of it. So some positives for them to take. And the fact that they were so far behind in the game as well, to come back from 27 points down to not only get a losing bonus point, but also to try bonus point as well out of the game, definitely going to be a positive feeling, I think, for them. And it'll give them the confidence as well going into next week. Maybe they can pick up a win in South Africa. Now on to the next one. Scarlets 20, Ulster 31. So Scarlets leading 6 points to 3. Plumtree goes to the bin for being off feet at the ruck, and I think he tugged at Cooney's arm from the middle of the ruck. Gareth Davies then goes to the bin as well, and Scarlets down to 13 just before the break. Ulster can't get over before half time to, with that 2-man advantage, but the second half they do. McCluskey powers through a gap and over. Scarlets struggling to cover the ground. Basically, McCluskey straightened up as Scarlets were drifting, and he grounds for the try. Timney then drives over off the back of a scrum, and Scarlets at that point, I think they're there are 14 men, but still, obviously, Ulster exploiting the fact that they are a man down at that point. McCann then gets the third under the posts, and Ulster at that point, they had the line under siege, and there's one of these ones where there's just bodies everywhere, and McCann manages to get over to score that one. Then Karen Tuipulotu actually drives over from a few meters out to give Scarlets some hope. He had it was one of these ones where it was a decent latch as well, I think, to give him some momentum to get over. Ulster, though, they come back pounding away at the line. They suck into defence, and then they send it wide for Stockdale to go over for the bonus point try. Johan Lloyd then steps his way through a gap and then puts Lewis over for the final score of the game. And yeah, Johan Lloyd, he has a lot of skill, that guy, and you can see why he's now won caps for Wales as well. As long as he keep fit and keep himself in contention there, he could be a decent option at 10, both for the Scarlets and for Wales. So Scarlets, we've seen it a lot this season where they produce, the tries that they got, especially, the Owen Lloyd try especially, can be spectacular. But it's been able to put in that 80-minute performance, and that's where they struggle. There were times where Ulster had them under all kinds of pressure, forcing them to, give away penalties and yellow cards as well, and then Ulster just grinding them down and getting over. And it's, that's I think the problem for the Scarlets is they can play well in patches within games, but they need to be able to play for longer to have any chance really to get themselves away from that kind of bottom 4 or 5 in the league. At the moment, they're not there. There's a lot of improvement as well for next season if they're going to get there. Ulster steadying the ship a little bit now. Richie Murphy is confirmed as the coach for next season, so I think that's great news for Ulster, getting rid of all that kind of uncertainty that players would have about who's coming in, who's going to get permanently, are those who are maybe coming towards the end of the contract, are they going to get a renewal? If also just the idea of, if it's not going to be Richie Murphy there, new guy coming in, is he going to fancy me as a player, or is he going to somebody else, and I'm going to be sitting in the stands or sitting on the bench rather than starting? All of that kind of uncertainty at least has gone out of the window. Players obviously still have to play for their places, but at least they know what the criteria is, or they should know at this stage with Richie Murphy what he's looking for from them. And yeah, Ulster, they kind of, I think that win against Cardiff, where they really shouldn't have won, really did kind of give them that base to build from, and I think they've done really well from there to do that. On to then the next game, Sharks 24, Benneton 25. Excellent win for Benneton down in South Africa. I talked about a lot this season how Benneton are becoming more and more competitive away from home, and this result again underlines that, because Sharks have come into some really decent form, kind of belying their league position at the minute. But start here, great pass from Masuku, who has been instrumental, I think, in that improvement from the Sharks as well. He offloads out of contact under pressure as well from Brex to put Fassi away. Fassi then sells a dummy and goes over to score. Oxenche then gets over to give the Sharks a 9-point lead. Benneton, though, hit back off a scrum. Brex putting Menoncello away, and he has the pace and also the strength to finish in the corner despite Cox's best effort. Lucchesi gets over just after the break as Benneton edge in front. Cox then powers his way over, evading a number of tackles to score and put Sharks back into the lead. He then produces a nice step to get over for a second, as Sharks seem to be taking control of the game. Coster then, though, gets red. It's head-on-head contact. It was a dangerous clear-out, and there's no mitigation for that. High degree of danger, so it absolutely has to be a red. I agree with the officials there. Zanon then gets through a half gap and he puts Umaga over to score. Umaga converts his own try and that proves to be the winning score. So Sharks, as I said, coming into some decent form. They won't be happy about dropping, this game at home. Yes, a lot of people would think in terms of the league, they don't really have all that much to play for, but they're preparing for a European final that could potentially put them into the Champions League positions and deny 8th place in the league that position instead. And given the fact that Gloucester lost 90 points to 0 against Northampton at the weekend, Sharks would have been looking for something to give them a bit of a bounce, as they over the next few weeks prepare for that. Started the game really well, but need to produce that finish, and especially in the final, if it's tight, they've got to finish better than they did in this game. Benneton, they've been up and down in the league. Like, they've been as high as second, they've been right down there as well, around 10th, 11th place too, and they've yo-yoed in between. So a lot of people would have seen the going down to South Africa and think, okay, well, that's a team that maybe we can make points upon. So it was important for them to get a win down in South Africa against the Sharks. And now that's put them, kept them right in the mix there for the playoff places. And the teams around them now have to work that little bit harder as well to try and either dislodge them or to join them in the playoffs. Next, then we have Munster 47, Connacht 12. So no score in this one actually as we approach the end of the first quarter. But then Hurley Langton is offside and Close was online, so he goes to the bin. Munster tap and then Snyman reaches out to score. Almost lost the forward. He had a TMO check that showed that he just about got downward pressure before the ball did squirt forward. So it's a good try. Nash then exploits a gap and has the pace to finish it off in the corner. Really good break from him, and it's good to see him, coming back to some decent form as well, and obviously fitness too. Connacht then finally opened their account just before half time. The attack off the back of a scrum into 22. Carty with just a lovely bullet of a pass out to Ralston, and over he goes in the corner. We then have a loose ball is picked up by Nankabil, and he goes through a gap up the middle and over to score. It's one of those ones where I think it was actually Munster had the ball, and the ball goes to ground. I think initially the referee called advantage for a knock on, but then it must have been one of his assistants on the touchline that said that no, the ball went backwards, because we actually play on from there, and Nankabil gets through there, and it almost felt like, even though it was Munster in possession and then Munster picking up the loose ball, it felt like it was almost a turnover. It was that kind of thing where you have that hesitancy in the defence, and he was able to exploit that. Frisch then, when I saw offload to put Carberry over before Ahern picks off an overthrow in the line out, bounces off a tackler as he gallops up the wing and goes over to score. If you can watch this try, it's definitely worth watching it. It wasn't on the highlights package that I watched. The only reason I saw it was because it was on, I think it was, somebody had it on Twitter or something. But yeah, really good score from him. And people comparing him to Ryan Baird, which is a really nice comparison in terms of his development as well. He is that kind of type of player, but also like Baird, I think he's got to offer more in the tight. That was one of my criticisms of Baird, was that he was this flash galloping giraffe that didn't offer as much, in his tight game. He's improved that a lot immensely, especially this season. Ahern probably does have a better tight game than him anyway, but yeah, the flash stuff is nice, and the guy is a beast, but we want to see a lot more from him, and we also want to see him being in that mix for Ireland, being involved in the camps, and then getting some caps under his belt as well. For me, I want to see more players being introduced into the Ireland team, so that when we do need to go to the wider squad, that players actually have that experience rather than having to throw guys in kind of green. Daly then rounds off the scoring with a last minute try, some decent hands to put him over. Final score then 47 points to 12. Munster, defending champions. I talked about them, in kind of before really they went down to South Africa, the fact that they were just about doing enough to win games without really being that impressive. But this game plus their South African tour, that they have really impressed now, and they're one of those teams that are coming into form right at the exact right time. Now they did it last year as well with that late run into the playoffs and to lift the trophy in the end, and they seem to have timed it right this year as well. Whether that's going to be with the same result, we'll have to see, but certainly if you're a Munster fan, you got to be feeling confident at this stage. Connacht, they're kind of going the opposite. They're falling away now towards the end of the season, and you don't want to be the team that is heading down the table as your rivals are passing you on the way up. It's going to be very hard now for Connacht to rediscover that form of the last two rounds and get themselves, into a playoff spot that they can actually hold on to. So, and even if they get into 8th place, they may make the playoffs. But again, with the Sharks in that final, that might not be enough for Champions Cup rugby. And Connacht, you can see that the ambition is there now with them, that they want to be in the Champions Cup, year on year if they can. I feel like as a squad, they're not quite there to deliver that every year, but the ambition is there, whereas in the past you wouldn't have really seen that from them. It's not that long ago where Connacht were down there with Zebre and the Dragons fighting it out to avoid the wooden spoon. They have won the competition in the past as well, but now we're seeing on kind of year-on-year basis where the expectations are lifting for them. So it feels like this season, if they don't make that top 8, is going to be a bit of a disappointment. But having said that, you've got a new kind of coaching team there. Yes, they're part of the old coaching team, but once somebody comes in as new head coach, it's their style. You've got to judge them from there. You can't say, oh, well, you were the assistant before, therefore, you should be further ahead. I think you got to remember that they were the assistant to somebody else and they were doing things that other person's way, even with their own little spin on it. But now, Pete Wilkins is in charge there, and I think he's done a decent job for a first season in charge. I think I saw some stats there where he's got about, I think, a 50% win ratio or around that for his first season, which is a decent return for them. And, with some decent recruitment in the off season, they could be even better next season. Problem with Connacht though is often you see like they just recruit a million really exciting backs, but maybe forget about they need a bit more depth in the pack as well. So let's see how they do with that. But yeah, it's in terms of just this season, they've definitely got to try and step things up now for the last two rounds to give themselves every chance of making those playoffs, if not the Champions Cup places. Next then, we have Lions 34, Cardiff 13. So Venter goes over from close range after like some really good ferocious defense from Cardiff, but they are conceding penalties, and you can see that pressure is gonna tell at some point, and it does when Venter gets over. Marius Lowe then with a quick tap punts the ball downfield from inside his own 22, just down the middle. Fullback Horn then wins the race to the ball, collects it and goes under the post. Just really great, quick thinking from Lowe to see that opportunity there and, give themselves a chance to get over to score. Cardiff then get on the board with 3 points after a scrum penalty. They're then over for a try shortly after the break through Domachowski from close range. A penalty from De Beer gets them within a score at 20 points to 13, but then that's as close as they got for the rest of the game. Lions mull over. One of those ones where the backs came in to help. Chutuka is the scorer. His second one then, and the Lions bonus point try came from actually a quick tap penalty from Cardiff. Bevan goes quickly. There's a couple of passes in there, but then the ball goes to deck and it's Chutuka kind of hacks the ball forward. That bounces up for Cronia, who breaks down the wing. He gets tackled a few meters short of the line, but Chutuka has continued his run and he's there in support and goes over to score. So a really good win for the Lions there because, they're still kind of on the edge, just outside the playoff places, but they're giving it a go, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to see them just kind of giving up at this stage. And you can see with the Lions that once things click, they can rack up scores very quickly. But you do kind of at times worry a little bit about their defense. But I thought, overall in this game, pretty decent defensive effort. Cardiff, at the start of the season, we were, delighting in the fact that they've got this young team that have come in and they're exciting and they're getting results. But now kind of reality has hit really for them, and the grind of the URC season has taken a bit of a toll on them as, they've fallen away at the end of the season. And now, they go into, I think they're playing the Sharks, I think, next, right? I'm pretty sure. And that's kind of almost like a playoff place for the, what position is it? It's like 12th position, I think, is the highest that either of those can finish. So, yeah, maybe Cardiff can kind of get themselves back for one more big performance before the end of the season. And if they do win that, then they'll at least go into the final round thinking that, they're on a bit of a bounce. But we'll have to see from there when we do our preview of next week's games. Next, then we have Leinster 61, Ospreys 14. So Leinster, first try, they run the ball out of their own 22. Returning Jimmy O'Brien showing really good pace down the wing to score. Maloney then forces his way over from close range. Ospreys get themselves on the board. Morris comes on a great line against the grain as they're attacking off the back of a scrum in the shadow of the post. He gets over to score. Just a really good line, catches the Leinster defence out. Ospreys then tied up with a penalty try. Frawley going to the bin as well because he tackles his man in the air, preventing the score. It was one of these where it's a crossfield kick into the behind the try line, and he times it completely wrong and deservedly gets a yellow card, and I think it was definitely a penalty try as well. But it's actually Leinster who scored during the yellow card period. Larmour getting to a bobbling grubber kick first to dot it down. Start the second half then. Jenkins goes over after good work from Jimmy O'Brien, and that's the bonus point try for Leinster. Henshaw then bursts through a gap, and then Larmour with a good step, and he's over for a second. Tommy O'Brien breaks on the wing, chips over the defence, collects it and offloads for Osborne to finish that one off. Natai then finishes off a nice move that was kind of off the top of like a 5 metre line out. just some nice hands, and he's the guy there to get over to score. Larmour then completes his hat-trick, the easiest one of the three for him. Leinster go wide, having sucked into defence, and he just has to stroll over to score. And then Jimmy O'Brien puts in a well-placed kick through for Tommy O'Brien to get the final score after a flowing move. So 61 points to 14, really good for Leinster. And we heard from the Leinster camp, from Leo Cullen, that Leinster were going to pick strong teams for the rest of the URC season. They're obviously not going to pick like their starting team in terms of a Champions Cup final, but you can see that there's a lot of those guys in there. You know, it's not a full strength team, but it's not that far off, and it's certainly stronger than the teams they were picking at this time last year. So hopefully they learned their lesson from that. It's a really good win for them. Not quite enough to reclaim top spot, but they weren't going to reclaim top spot anyway by the time we got to kick off in this game. They knew that, so they got their maximum out of the game, and this really helped with points difference as well, because it's really close between themselves and Glasgow in that respect. Ospreys, they've been a bit of, you know, a really good team this year in terms of, you know, we wanted to see a Welsh team actually producing in the URC, and they have done, but now at the pointy end of the season, they're doing what we've seen the likes of Edinburgh last year doing, and we've seen Connacht do it in the past as well, is where they kind of fall off in those crucial last few rounds where they've got to go into tough games and they've got to somehow find a way to get points out of them. They're not doing that at the minute, and it means that, you know, it's going to be so much more difficult for them to make those playoffs. The fact that now, you know, they're going to, I think, are they playing two Welsh teams? They're certainly playing at least one Welsh team in the last two rounds. So that's going to give them certainly a chance to come back now in terms of coming back up the league. But they're, you know, relying a little bit on other results as well going their way. Whereas you feel if, you know, they had performed a little bit better over the last few rounds, maybe they could have, you know, had their fate in their own hands. But you have to remember as well, they went into South Africa and they did really well there too. So it's not all, you know, it's not all kind of negative for them either. And again, whether they make the playoffs this year or not, this season has been a huge step forward for them, and I'm expecting them to make another step forward next year as well on the back of that. And, you know, last two rounds, they're still in with a chance of making the playoffs, and if they can win their last two games, there's a really good chance that they are going to be in those playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, then if they can deliver there and get a little bit further in the knockouts, that's going to be huge for them as a region, and especially as a Welsh region. It's, as I said, it's just great to see a Welsh region up there and competing. We got a region from every one of the competing nations now fighting out for those playoff places. So as we're talking about that, we're going to have a look at the table as it stands at the moment. So top of the table still Glasgow Warriors. They got those 2 points crucially from that game at Loftus against the Bulls. And the point difference now, 177 for them. See Leinster there in second place, just 1 point behind, and a slightly better points difference after that big win against the Ospreys. Munster in third place, just a point back as well. So like 2 points between first and third is just crazy at this point in the season. And, you know, as I said, Munster in amazing form. A lot of people might be thinking, okay, well, if Glasgow slip up, Leinster are going to finish top of the league. You know, Glasgow probably have to win in South Africa next week to prevent that. But then Munster are there as well, and potentially Munster, if Leinster slip up against Ulster, then Munster are going to pit both of them to top spot. And if they're going on in as first seed and defending champions, it's going to be a brave, man or woman that's going to back against them then in terms of retaining the title, because it'll feel like all the momentum was with them. So normally, I don't think, normally we don't have this kind of scrap for first place at this stage in the league, certainly since it's become the URC. I know it's only the third year of the URC, but it feels very different this year. And it also feels like getting that number one seeding could have a big effect on the team that actually gets it. We've got the Bulls then down in fourth place there. They've got now a 6-point gap over the Stormers, which means that they should be able to breathe a little bit easier in terms of getting a home quarter final. But they're only 4 points away from Glasgow at the top there as well. And they know if any of those three teams above them slip up, they've got a huge opportunity as well to potentially have a home quarterfinal, home semi-final, and maybe even have a home final if results really go their way. But those seem to be certainly, obviously, the top four teams in the league, but also in terms of just the performance over the last little while, they seem to be the form teams as well. We then have the Stormers, who've done really well to come from outside the playoff places. I think they were down in 11th place at one point, up to 5th place now, but they're the guys with a target on the back now, because it's the queue behind them at the moment, right? And they've got to keep producing results from now to the end of the season to keep that spot there. There is an outside chance that they could catch the Bulls. And, anyone above that, I think, is a bit of a stretch for them at this stage. And again, catching the Bulls is out of their hands as well. Next thing we have is Ulster 1 point back. So that win against Scarlets and the fact that, they've been digging in over the last few weeks and producing results really has helped them into 6th place at the moment, but they can't rest on that. They're still not safe within the playoff places, and they've got the Stormers a point ahead of them there as well. So they know they've got to get at least something out of their next game against Leinster. They'd love to get the win, but you feel like they've got to get at least something out of that and not leave themselves having to do it all in the final round. Edinburgh then, it's 7th place. It's great to see them up there at the minute, because again, last year, this is when they failed to deliver. They fell away and they ended up outside the playoff places, but they're right in there now. They've got 2 rounds left to go, and it feels like if they can get a win, a decent win in those final 2 rounds, that could be enough to stave off the Connacht and the Lions for that playoff place. And then Benneton on the same amount of points, 48 as well. They're in 8th place, are obviously at the moment the target for Connacht in 9 on 44, and the Lions in 10th also on 44. So it feels like that's kind of, those are the teams really in contention. We've got the Ospreys then in 11th on 40 points. So 8 points for them to make up on Benneton, but realistically, they've probably got to get, to one more than Benneton. So 9 points to make up versus Benneton. And that feels like, a big ask, because Ospreys, certainly Ospreys could get 9 points in the last 2 games, but then they're relying on, either Benneton or Edinburgh not scoring any points in those 2 rounds, and also, scoring at least 5 more points than both Connacht and the Lions in that period as well. So just the fact that there are so many teams in the mix ahead of them, that even getting those 9 points may not be enough for them. But again, want to see them at least finish the season strongly and feel like next year that they can compete with the top teams in the league and be able to push for that playoff place next year. Then we come into kind of, the two teams now who are kind of in a little bit of limbo between themselves. So we've got 12th place Sharks on 25 points and 13th place Cardiff on 25 points as well. And I'm pretty sure those two are actually playing next week. So that's probably going to be the decider for those places, even though there's obviously a chance for it to switch back in the final round of games. On to the bottom three then. They've been on the same points now for a while. We've got the Scarlets on 17, Dragons on 16, and Zebre on 15. So it feels now, if one of those teams win in the last two rounds, that is definitely going to be enough to avoid any chance of the wooden spoon. But I wouldn't be surprised actually if, between them, maybe they don't even pick up any match points at all in the final few rounds. But hopefully they do. Hopefully we see again a little bit of a kind of positive end to the season for these teams, because again, it's great seeing the teams, from 1st to 11th all being competitive. And it's good to see, as you said, Cardiff being decent at the start of the season, the Sharks coming into good form at the end of the season. But we want to see all of the teams in the league being competitive, and that means these three being lifted up as well. So hopefully that happens. But that is the end of this one. I'm wearing my Ulster jersey because I feel like, the news about Richie Murphy being there is the most positive of the weekend as well. I'm just delighted for them because they've had, an awful season in terms of all the upheaval up there at Ravenhill. So it's great to see that there's going to be some stability there, and hopefully that means that the province is going to, move forward in a better vein from next season on as well. But I've also enjoyed my kind of weekend off rugby as well, and it was great to come back today and kind of feel a bit refreshed and be able to tackle this one as well, and probably as usual talk for too long. But again, I love rugby. I hope you guys love listening to me talk about rugby as well. And we'll have a preview of the next round of the URC, probably maybe coming out on Wednesday. I think that's going to be my aim for that one anyway. So hopefully I'll see you guys on that one.